Nick, what did you make of protests over the weekend? There were some in Queensland, some in Sydney, some in Melbourne. Goodness knows what the suite of things they are protesting about. Some were about lockdowns, wanting them lifted. Others blaming coronavirus on 5G. One involved a mother and a young child. Why? Unless you're a climate activist, would you bother bringing a young child to a protest? That's what they normally do. But anyway, what did you make of it all?
Well, look, I think it's wonderful that we live in a country where people do have the right to protest and express their view, but I thought some of the scenes we saw at the protests at the weekend were pretty disappointing. I mean, these people are protesting against the lockdown laws. They say they're in favour of freedom. Well, I can tell you, I've been to a few protests over my time, and I've never seen any of those people protesting for the freedom of those refugees on Christmas Island or in detention. So they seem to be pretty selective in some of their views. And look, as for that woman who's an anti-vaxxer, she kept her shop running against lockdown laws. She took her child along to a protest and then had her child in the middle of a fray at the protest. I mean, that woman is a menace to society and to herself and her own family. So, look, support the right to protest, but I think it was pretty sad, some of the scenes we saw there on the weekend.
Look, I support the right to protest too, but just as I'm tough on your crazy mob, the CFMU thugs who go up and down the streets of Melbourne, Nick, I'm also dead against young kids missing school to protest about climate change. And I think the anti-vaxxers, Rita, and all these 5G conspiracy theorists are utter nut jobs. I mean, this idea that the NRL football teams are allowed out on the ground after promising that everyone would get the flu jab, I think it's an absolute luxury that they get to do their sport in and around all the restrictions so many of us face. I mean, I know people who can't even have a funeral, for God's sake, a proper funeral, but the footballers can go out there and now they don't want to have their flu vax.
Well, the AFL, they've said that they don't even have to have the flu vax. So it's really the NRL's being a lot more hard line with the flu vaccination than other competitions have been thus far. Look, I'm being consistent on this. When I saw that woman and her child, I thought, you do not take a child to a protest where there's a potential to have violence or an incident like that where you could get arrested. It's so distressing for the child, just like with the environmental protesters. But I also thought the police were pretty heavy-handed in that particular case because that child was obviously distressed, and to be ripping him out of his mother's arms, I thought perhaps wasn't entirely necessary. But those protesters, particularly the ones in Victoria, I mean, that was just a massive free kick to Dan Andrews. He can now try to dismiss legitimate concerns about some of his illogical evidence-free restrictions and say, oh, no, but look at those protesters. That's all, they're the only ones who are concerned about the measures I'm taking. Those protesters, they were just an absolute bunch of conspiracy theories. There was 5G there was anti-vaxxers there, I don't know, there were signs there about Carole Baskin's being a murderer. I mean, it was just a complete mess. Bill Gates conspiracy theorists. So I don't think they're in any way representative of the many Victorians and Australians who do have concerns about some of the illogical restrictions, particularly ones that apply in Victoria and nowhere else in the country.